Hope everybody's doing well on this particular Wednesday afternoon. I know that I am excited and hoping that my team can bounce back from their loss recently over the weekend because I am a diehard Marquette Golden Eagle fan. The Warriors back in the time that I was going to school and at the time that Doc Rivers was playing with us and all along those lines. But they are playing the team that actually gave us the current coach, that being Shaka Smart, because he came from Texas after having been at VCU, and they've got a match today with Texas in that game between his old school and his new school. And I'm over the new school will pull out the victory and all along those lines. But, they've got to toss that ball up in the air and see which way it goes and which team comes out victorious and all along those lines. But the game will be this evening, and I'll probably be glued somewhere near a TV, either yelling at the players or maybe even screaming in joy at them hitting some winning shots and all along those lines. So depending on how the game is going, I might be in agony or in defeat, if I can use that line from the old notion of what used to be on when Wide World of Sports would come on and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Just like I know a lot of people are paying attention to what's going on politically. And we do have that Republican debate. I think this will be the fourth one that'll be coming our way on this particular day, and they'll be over there in Alabama. And some people are even upset at Alabama, speaking about sports and all along those lines, because Alabama is one of the four that will be in the championship, even though it'll be an expanded field next year. Some people, including some in the ACC, are feeling that Florida State and possibly even Georgia and others got slighted by what happened in that particular case and all along those lines. But a lot of people will be paying attention to the debate, and there's only four candidates. And speaking of four, that'll be in this particular race as well. So Christie is still there. So Christie will be there along with DeSantis, along with Nikki Haley, and along with Vivek Ramaswamy. So they will all be there debating. And since it's only the four of them and not the front runner, Mr. Trump, who has bypassed all of the debates and all along those lines. So former President Trump will not be there, just like he hasn't been at any of the other ones either. And there are a lot of people that are speculating that it's going to come down to a Trump-Biden rematch, even though I know a lot of folks are not excited by that notion or even that idea. But hey, it may be what we have to deal with, whether we want to or not. So it'll be quite interesting to see how that goes and what people are thinking about it in that nature. There are even some people that are saying that Nikki Haley is getting some major money and some major donors, so maybe she can make some dent in that strong Trump support. And I had actually even heard Trump recently say that he didn't think that Biden would be the Democratic nominee. So he was putting some air of dissent in that kind of conversation. And then I also recently heard today this notion of I think it was RFK, who has been running for president as well, saying that he was on that Jeffrey Epstein plane at least twice. I don't know that I'd be trying to admit to that and all along those lines, but he did say that he was on that plane and all in that space. And then we did have a major icon, a television icon that just recently passed away, but he lived a very long life and definitely did some great television shows, including All in the Family, including Happy Days, and a number of other ones as well. But Norman Lear just passed away at 101. So he made it past the century mark and all along those lines. But I've got a longtime friend. He does a lot of work over there at the Hayti Heritage Center. And y'all heard me talking about that institution. And I'll be heading over there later on because they've got a yoga class at around 6 or 6:30. So I'll be heading in that general direction for that class later on and seeing what's going on in that space. Since I think they've got two more classes of yoga, the one today and the one next week. And then following that, there'll be the African dance because I've been going there on Mondays as well. And that's been definitely fun to go there on Mondays and see the folks doing African dance and African drumming. And I think they've got two more left as well. So they should have one on the 11th and on the 18th. And the last time I saw Charles was actually just this past weekend where we were both there watching an amazing jazz concert, as he oftentimes does a lot of the photography for the Hayti Heritage Center and does a great job with it. He's even taking some headshots for yours truly and all along those lines. So always glad to get those headshots from Charles and learning more about what he's got going on in that space. I'll bring Mr. Ruffin in and see how he's doing. So, how are you doing today? I'm glad to see you here. Like I said, we saw each other on Sunday when there was that amazing jazz concert that
Right.
was going on, and we were definitely hearing some great music. And you were oftentimes
Yes.
running around. And I'm sure you saw some great pictures and were able to get Miss Barnes in some great shots, as well as Stanley Baird and a number of the other folks that are part of that
Oh,
band that is the house band over there at Hayti.
absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Hear you loud and clear.
All
So
right,
definitely,
that's good. That's good. You know
yeah,
me, I'm a photographer, so I try to make sure I got my audio and my video going. And so, Mark, I'm glad to be here finally.
yeah,
Get here to chop it up with you a little bit.
yeah.
This is some of the things I love to do. Mark's been great. Mark, as your followers probably know, you're like an icon in Durham, man. You one of those guys that's standing on the wall, man, being the watchman.
Being
So
the watchman, trying to see what's going on, making sure that the building is intact, but also in some cases even helping to put on the events and organize the events
that's
and
right.
all on those lines. So definitely
Yes.
glad to have these various roles and everything. Hey Charles, when did you first get into photography? I've never asked you that before, and I know that you've done photography for a long time. I think you had a bit of a military background, if I remember correctly, and
Yeah.
also,
Oh boy, you got a good memory. I was in the army. I went in the army right after high school, and everything happened for me in Germany. And so,
wow,
as far as photography, Germany has all those cobblestone roads. They have castles everywhere, and I didn't know anything about photography. And I was over there hustling.
mhm,
I've always been a hustler. When I was a kid, I used to shovel snow in Cleveland, Ohio. I always tried to make a little money for myself. I had a paper route at 12 and worked at the little city special programs at 14 and then 15. I've always worked and I've always had little side hustles going too. So, I had a hustle over there. It was very unique. Um, I found myself in a place called Schwäbisch Gmünd. It's in
mhm,
the southern part of Germany. And we had a missile storage area. And I had to guard missiles. We all had to guard these nukes that we got over there. This was during I'm gonna date myself. This is during the Reagan administration, and we were building up because we were there with East Germany, which was communist then, before the walls came down, and so we had to show force. But you could volunteer to take someone's guard duty, and they would pay you.
oh, wow,
And so I was like, I'm going up on this hill. I'm doing so much guard duty. I don't know where I am. So I might as well just camp out. So I started hustling and doing people's guard duty for them and volunteering to go up there. I just stayed up there and just stacked money and I bought a camper. And so incidentally, I started taking pictures. I didn't know how to use a camera. This was manual. I'll never forget. It was a Pentax K1000. Anybody that does photography probably knows that back in the film days.
mhm,
I started taking a few pictures, but to tell you the truth, I'm just gonna give you a little history.
yeah,
I've always played bass guitar since I was 15,
oh, wow,
and I'm a Ruffin, and my family goes back to David Ruffin and Jimmy Ruffin.
mhm,
And so I was able to meet some of my dad's younger cousins who lived in Meridian, Mississippi, up the road from David Ruffin. And all these Ruffins went from Meridian, Mississippi, crossed over to Alabama to a little town called Pushmataha, Alabama. So music has always been. My dad was a blues guitarist,
oh, yeah,
and he made me back him up. And so I learned how to play bass, and he taught me a bunch of basic blues. So I always felt that music was what I was supposed to do.
right,
This is the interesting part.
uh-huh,
So I was over there taking pictures, but I started a band,
okay,
and the band blew up. That was probably the most talented band I've ever been in, because you get soldiers from all over. But I would take pictures of the soldiers when they get dressed up, because um, over there, the pastime, we had nothing to do, really, not a whole lot to do, because Germany was very different, you guys. Germany, uh, everything closed at 6 o'clock,
Oh well.
and on Saturdays 2:30, and every day they would take a break for a siesta
Mm-hmm.
at noon to 2 o'clock. Very different. So we had a lot of free time on our hands. So if I wasn't touring, traveling with the band, I was taking pictures, and I just would mess up and learn. And then after I was able to take some decent photos, guys would get dressed up because the dollar was so strong against the mark.
Mm-hmm.
$1 gets you 3 marks.
Oh well.
3-to-1 ratio. So guys bought clothes. They had some of the most incredible tailors, some German and some Korean. Now the Koreans were there because some of the military guys had been to Korea. They brought their wives there. They sometimes didn't even have to measure you. They could look at you and start making a suit or a coat or those real, I don't know if some people know what I'm talking about. Wherever you were stationed, they used to make these beautiful leather jackets, and they would embroider the unit you were in. You could get it to say anything. And I would take pictures of guys getting dressed up. And they send it back home to their wife, their kid, their mom, or whoever. And that was my hustle. I started
It was a great hustle. That was a great hustle and everything.
That was a great hustle, and it was fun.
It sounds like it was fun. Just out of curiosity, because you mentioned it earlier, and I did not realize your relation to the famous Ruffin family and everything. But what is your take on the Durham and the North Carolina music scene? Because I'm actually one of the things that we have a music scene that doesn't get the recognition that it probably deserves. But I just wonder your take on the music scene.
Now I'm glad you brought that up, because when I moved here, I played on the gospel set. I played in a church in Durham. This was Bishop George Bloomer, not far from you guys. He's over there on the street's gonna come back to me in a minute. Dowd Street.
Yes.
Yeah, Dowd Street. I played bass for George Bloomer for 10 years. And while playing bass in the gospel world, I met a lot of these musicians you see now because they were coming from Central.
Right.
The jazz school. And oh man, let me tell you something I learned about North Carolina. Some of you guys gonna say, oh yeah, he knows. There's a lot of talent in Greensboro.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some of the most fantastic musicians come out of Greensboro, Winston-Salem, even out east, they call it down east,
right?
And Greenville. I know some musicians coming out of there, and they're hot. And some of them, they all migrate to Charlotte, to some of the larger churches, and then all these kids that come through Central, I got to know them, and then when they play at the jazz sets down in downtown Durham at now my memories gets bad.
Talk of the Town,
and what's the other place down there? They might have changed management, and
Blue Nut Grill or BU Cafe.
BU Cafe. Mm-hmm. BU Cafe. Yep. A lot of those guys play there.
And yeah, the BU Cafe is still there. I think that they are on hold for music at the moment, but I think that eventually Dorian will bring it back. But definitely they've done music and they were on hold, is my understanding, but they might be bringing it back because
Yeah, I didn't know what happened with them, but that was a hot spot, wasn't it, Mark? You go down there, it was beautiful. You go on a date, or take your wife or whoever. You go down there and you're gonna hear some good live jazz. And it was small. Remember, it was jam packed every weekend. And then you could walk out and sit out and listen to the music inside the club, right there on the Strasse. It was just beautiful. I love the music scene. And now let me tell you, that's why I love Hey Ty, because let me finish that Germany story. When I came back from Germany, my sister saw some of the photos and she said she wanted to do photography. I gave her that camera, and when I got back to the States, I just boom, I just hit the trail back playing bass.
Mm.
I got I did a lot of good work with Bishop Bloomer. We got to travel, we got to record. He and his family are very talented. I mean, they wrote songs all day long. It was so much fun because they could just spit out songs. Him and his two daughters, they would just put out songs, and then we would have to create music for the song. And that was just such a great thing. And all these musicians would come through the church too, and it was just fabulous. So I ran with that. But I'm gonna tell you guys, a lot of times we don't know exactly what we're called to do, or we don't know. And this is different for me because I thought I was supposed to be a bass player.
Right.
Because my dad, Ruffin family name and all that. I just figured that's what it was. But I'm going to tell the truth. A lot of people don't know. But I would always say, something tugging at my heart, like, this is good, but this ain't it. This is not it for you. It's something else you're supposed to do. That's the fact. But I didn't accept it. So let's move on. Music. I worked at a music store. My passion for the bass guitar was vast. I was always a nerd. So a place opened up called Mars Music, over in Raleigh, in Capitol Boulevard. And I went there and interviewed. That was the strongest interview I ever gave. I said, dude, I can hear a bass, and I can tell you whether it's a Fender Jazz. I can tell you it's a P bass. I can tell you if they're using some kind of Gibson. I can tell you if it's some kind of exotic bass. I can tell you the woods and different things. I was running, I was telling them the truth. And I said, you can bring equipment in, give me 10, 15 minutes. I'll figure it out and know how to use it. And it was true. I worked there and had a ball, but I met all these musicians in the area. So there's a lot of musicians that I know from 20 years ago. Now, let's move up to photography. I started photography in 2010.
Okay.
And I made up my mind then. I went through a bad spell. I had a bad divorce. And this is the truth. This is what it is. I had a bad divorce. I was cleaned out. Mark, I was sitting up there. My ex-wife was an attorney. It didn't work out good. But a buddy of mine from Cleveland called me up. And he said to me, he says, Chuck, how you doing? I said, man, I'm going through a divorce. And I'm selling my bass guitars. I was like, it was bad, you guys. It was bad. I'm telling you. I was selling my favorites. I had one guitar. This guitar was, I paid $28 for it, but it went for like $4,000. I had to sell it, whatever I get. Had another old Fender Jazz, 1976. I went over and I had to sell that overseas. Oh, that was something else too. It was rough. It was rough. It was rough. And my buddy, he just told me, he said, look, man, I got a gift, Chuck. I said, you got a gift? What you talking about? He said, what's your passion? He said, when you go through a divorce, you need a passion to fall into. And I said, yeah. He said, you still doing the bass? I said, man, I'm about done with the bass. I said, playing in bands, you don't know who got what kind of attitude, or musicians are funny anyway. My aunt had a little saying called "sitchy muchy." Musicians are sitchy muchy. I said, I'm about done with all that. And he said, I tell you what. He said, my gift is connecting guys with their passion. He had a nonprofit called Dads Do Care.
Okay.
And he spent his time with programs such as marches and walks with fathers and sons. And he would give, he would speak to them and try to bridge the gap that many of them had, help them to understand, some of them have big age difference. Like, if, my dad was like that. My dad was 20 years older than my mom. And so my dad was 40 years older than me. So it was a big gap. You know, he was the old school. Let me tell you about my dad. Now he played the guitar, but he worked at Ford Motor Company.
Oh wow.
And my dad got an award. I was 12 years old. He got an award for 25 years perfect attendance on an assembly line. So many people here know about textiles and different things, but yeah, it was the type of thing when that engine block would come by and he put the crankshaft in the core of the engine. The crankshaft went in there, and he'd be putting that in there, and you got time, you got a short amount of time, and you got to have a rhythm, and you can't fall off because it's an assembly line. You mess the assembly line up, so that's really hard work with a 30-minute lunch break, Mark.
That's only 30-minute lunch break, not even a
30-minute
full hour.
lunch break, and he had the old fashioned lunch box with the coffee thermos in there, a sandwich, a nab, and an apple. Something hardcore.
It sounds hardcore. Just out of curiosity, because you mentioned coming from Ohio, and I know that there are others that have came from Ohio as well. As a matter of fact, a long-time acquaintance of mine is Jess Everhart, and I know she does a lot in the leadership community and all along those lines. And I believe she came from Ohio as well. So what do you think is the appeal of North Carolina to folks from Ohio? Because like I said, you're one of two people that I know that have come from that area. I know some others that have come from Missouri and other parts of the Midwest. But I was just wondering, what is it you think draws people to North Carolina like yourself and like Jess Everhart, who is a leader in the community?
Boy, that's an excellent question. I'm going to tell you straight up. Number one, there are two things in the culture I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. One of them is music. I mean, we had bands like the Fabulations, the Fabulations band. So we had live music everywhere. We had talent shows everywhere. I mean, the dream, Mark, like you got to get a band. I had a band when I was 15, and we was all over doing talent shows, and it was like 3 or 4 majors: John F. Kennedy High School, John Adams High School, and Shaw High School, which incidentally, Shaw here recruits heavily from Shaw High School in Cleveland.
Oh, wow.
I found that out. But let me tell you, so the music is one thing, but the main thing I believe is the weather. Oh, we love cars. Cars are big, just like Motown. We're not far from Detroit, about 4 hours, 4.5 hours from Detroit. That thing, cars are a culture. And so everybody dreamed of getting a car from down south because it wouldn't have the salt on it. It wouldn't be rusty. Woo, it came from the south. Whoa. And then it was just a big thing, a premium to come up here with an older car that was clean because it was not exposed to the salt on the roads for the snow. So you get up here, the winters are mild. No snow, basically. Now, they may complain about everything shutting down, but us up north rascals are still happy. It's like they ain't got to deal with that snow, and everybody feels like the air is cleaner. It feels like we're going to live a little longer because it's warmer and all that, and all the trees. Most everybody from home comes here and says, "Ooh, look at all the trees. Look at all the land y'all got undeveloped." Because, you know, it's landlocked up north in most big cities. You can't find that much vegetation. You can't. Unless, you know, you go out to the farm places, and most urban people don't do that. So
now, most urban people are not going to do that at all and everything. You mentioned earlier, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this notion of the importance of family. And you mentioned even your dad's age gap and even your own divorce and everything. I was just wondering, do you think that we still have the same family values that we used to have? Because I know that even on this network and on other shows, I hear people sometimes complaining that they don't see that strong family center the way that it used to be. I know that I'm still very close to my mom. Talked to her earlier today and talked to her yesterday as well. And we'll probably give Dad a call later on today, if not tomorrow, but definitely keep in touch with them on a fairly regular basis. And I know others that do that as well here in this house, but I don't know that everybody does. And we oftentimes hear about this division in the family and the way that our young people aren't doing as much as we used to do in terms of being raised correctly, if I can use that kind of term and everything. But I was wondering your take on that.
Man, look, let me tell you something. Now, I'm going to tell you, at my house, now my parents didn't get along a lot. They were arguing and fighting. but the family thread was thick. Okay. And what I mean by that, every holiday we got together. Now, my mother's side of the family was vast. My grandmother had 12 sisters and one brother. Okay. Imagine that. Every one of them had at least 5 kids.
Mm.
So I had cousins forever. About a third cousins. And then a lot of pretty good, it was 6 in my mom's family. So I had a lot of first cousins there. But the big thing was the third cousins. My mom had tons of first cousins because it was 12. I mean 13 of my grandmother, whatever. It was so many of them, and they had tons of first cousins. And so they were tight. They were close because they would group all the first cousins together by age and put them in pods. So all the ones that were within 2 years or 3 years, they were assigned to look out for each other in the city or whatever. And I mean, I'm just gonna tell you, in the city, they fought a lot, and it was, if you had a big family, that was your security.
Right.
Because it was like, man, you got to fight him, then you're gonna have to fight the next one, and it would keep going up. If you get a fight with one that's your age, and then you got to fight all the cousins, or either you're gonna fight the brothers and sisters when the next one is older than you, and the next one's older than him, and then it was just something. But we were taught to look out for each other and protect each other, stick together, hold hands crossing the street. See, and then we had sidewalks on both sides of the street. So, people had access in the neighborhood to each other. So we knew, and all the kids played together at the corner playground, at the high school with the blacktop where you played basketball. But that was a thing. And in my neighborhood, my house was the hangout house.
Wow.
So this is where that family thing would multiply, because kids would come over to my house and then they would eat or hang out and then going to school. We had to walk up to my middle school, we call it junior high, was 2.5 miles. So a lot of my friends would come up, and my street was the main drag to get out of the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that and everything, because sometimes it can be strange reasons that'll be the reason that people will come to your house and everything. Because I know that I grew up in terms of my teenage years in a little small town called Warrenton, and at a time my parents were into farming and like more of this community gardening kind of stuff. So not like the full farm, even though my grandparents were into the full farm and everything. But we at one point had a goat and everything. I think the goat's name was Kizzy, and I can tell you that some of those neighborhood kids literally would come by the house to wrestle the goat, some to play with the goat, but definitely became kind of the focal point that you're talking about during the time we had that goat. And we might not have even had it that long. We might have only had it for maybe 3 or 4 years or something, but it became like the focal point that you said that people would want to come
out and see Kizzy. It's so funny you brought that up, because I went to see one of my former coworkers. He's not feeling well, so I went to check on him, and he lives out in Clayton. And I'm leaving, and this long-haired billy goat is walking across the yard, and he goes, "Get my phone, get my phone. Let me take a picture of that daggum goat. I keep telling so and so to get this goat out my yard." And he's taking a picture of the goat, and then a pit bull comes running, and I said, "Oh man, here come a pit bull." I said, "A lot of them dogs fight the goat, but the goat usually got something for them." Right. He said, "No, they buddies." And the pit bull came up, they kind of nodded, and then they took off running in the woods somewhere. That happened today.
No, that's interesting, because I know that Mom jokes, not to mention Mom earlier, that she's got 2 families that are in her backyard in Rocky Mountain, and they are a turkey family and I think it's a family of turkeys and a family of it's another animal. I can't remember what it is, but they're back there and everything. And she's oftentimes talking about what they're doing. Deer. It's turkey and deer. It's a family of turkey and a family of deer. And they'll be back there just grazing and having their moment and letting Mom have her moment in her house. But she does recognize that they are there and they are living their life, and she's living hers. But she just acknowledges them. Sometimes when we're talking to each other, she'll tell me, "I haven't seen the turkey family today," or "I haven't seen the deer family." but she'll acknowledge it when she's seen them and all along those lines. But yeah, it's just fascinating, these kind of connections that people have
That's
even
huge
to their
because
pets and everything. But one thing that I'm curious about, Charles, just really quickly, is it even comes down, one of the things that this network has been talking about, we even had a show about it, is bullying. And you kind of alluded to it with your upbringing and everything. So we have a show that Stephanie Hockenhall out of Kansas does with her son Gene, who's out of Memphis, and they focus on bullying. But we had a bit of an incident in Southeast Raleigh, and I used to have a cousin that used to work there. He now works at a different school there in Raleigh. I think it's Longleaf or something like that. But he used to work at Southeast Raleigh, and we know about that stabbing death that took part there. And apparently there were a lot of warning signs that took place and everything. So there are a number of folks, because I think they had a school board meeting recently where they were asking for additional resource officers, for additional ways of reporting, including even an app that they want to institute, people using that app and everything instead of the current telephone number that is out there and everything. And some people are saying that even if you put the like the warning systems, that could put a stigma on people, because then that's like putting this notion that they already have a criminal mindset. And my brother actually works with at-risk youth, so I can understand part of what that argument is. But I just wondered, do you think we're doing enough in terms of protecting our students when they go to school? Because even you mentioned that when you grew up, you had a protection mechanism because you had all these cousins that were going to have your back. If somebody jumped you, I'm sure that they were going to jump them, and it wasn't going to be pretty.
That's, it's funny, a lot of people tend to say, well, it wasn't like that in my day. I can't say that. I can't say that, because when I was in middle school, they had metal detectors when I was in middle school in Cleveland. So it was bad. Now, a stabbing or a shooting, I did not see that in school. And fortunately, we didn't. They fought, but they threw knuckles.
Right.
But a stabbing or a shooting was not common when I grew up in the area. But there were stabbings and there were shootings. I'm not sure, but I do know this. Technology has advanced so much that they can almost see anything. But it's still a culture with the kids of not ratting or telling or being snitch.
A snitch, right?
They still say snitches get stitches, even the kids now. But with that in place, because the kids know first, you can't even keep up with all the stuff that's going on with these kids. They got everything going. How do they film all these fights and then it blast all around the school? You know what I mean? It's like they got their own.
They got their social media. They put it on their Instagram, their Facebook, their Twitter, and sometimes they're even shooting it while it's taking place and everything. And sometimes they are. It's almost like that Kitty Genovese syndrome, where they are seeing action and don't want to jump in the middle of the action for fear of being harmed themselves. But they don't have a problem necessarily with taking the pictures. I get around by mass transit. Even on the bus, I've seen people taking pictures of different things that are going on, even at the bus terminal downtown. I've seen them grabbing their cameras and taking pictures of this and that, but they're not trying to jump in the middle of it.
They're not going to get involved. They're not going to get involved, but they're going to film first. Even with the incident over there in Raleigh,
right?
I saw some of the teachers standing there with their arms folded. And I'm not judging them, because I'm like, if you're a teacher, it's a good chance you're not even equipped to get involved.
Right.
And it might be wise not to. But we had paid security guards. And I don't know how many resource officers they can have in the school, but I know in middle school, we had 6.
Wow.
We had 2 stories. We had about 6, maybe 8, but I remember 6. And they were busiest between classes. They were always roaming the hallways.
No, I definitely can relate to that, because even in my school, which is a small rural school in North Carolina, like I said, it was in Warrenton, I think that there was definitely not so much the resource officers, but definitely the head coach and I want to say the assistant coach, who were also part of the leadership in the sense of like principals and stuff like that, were also part of the management and trying to make sure that the campus was secure. And like you, I don't remember a lot of knife fights. I'm not saying that they weren't there. I just don't remember a lot of them, but I do remember quite a few fist fights. And I was actually, this was in the late 70s. I think the first time that I had recognized the drug situation in schools was when I saw a classmate that was high on something. It might have been heroin or it might have been angel dust or one of those. And they took a whole, basically an army, including some of these coach types to subdue him and to get him calmed down in order to be handled and all along those lines. And even what you're talking about at that time because I remember doing a story at my school paper where we were just getting in-school suspensions, which is very common now, but we were just implementing that at that time because they were bringing it out, and some people were loving the ideas and some people were not loving the idea. But definitely they just got around to the in-school suspension during the time that I was there in the mid to late 70s.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think they can, how do you hire people to watch that? Because I just thought about, you're right. It's a TikTok thing, or a social media thing. You almost have to monitor it.
And that's one thing I was going to ask you, even about your photography. I'm actually going to show a little bit because I pulled up your website, some of the photography, including some of your real estate photography. But what is your thoughts when it seems like everybody, because even Eric Kelly, who does the Black Business Olympics, he used to do it here on the network, now he does it on his own network. He talks about how the camera itself is like everybody's go-to for information, and we have at our disposal all this information and all of this education. And I can see that point and I can agree with that point, but at the same time, a lot of people think that they are great photographers just because they have a camera phone and they can shoot a picture. Now, I don't think that they have the same skill set necessarily that you do with your advanced cameras and everything, but you can't argue that with some of them because they'll tell you that I can take as good a picture as Charles or as good a picture as another photography friend of mine, Martin Freed, who does our whole Road to the Apollo, and a number of other photographers that I know, just because I've got this camera phone. But I don't know if the camera phone is as effective, but I just wanted your take.
Yeah, so that's really good. Now I'm going to be honest, that technology is closing the gap. But they can't do what a professional photographer with a pretty good camera and lens combination can do with low light. Now, the stuff I shoot at Hayti, and a lot of people have those camera phones, they know, because the sensor is so small. You know how it's dark in the audience, it's super bright on stage. That camera phone can't take good pictures in that. It can't do it. And if some people say that they do take good pictures, it's because they don't know what good pictures look like. But they can't take that, because I started in Hayti, believe it, Mark, 2014.
So was one of the first things that you did? Because I was actually going to mention that when we were talking about the jazz scene. And by the way, I was correct. BU has pretty much pulled back their jazz programming. And one of the other things that has been pulled back in the Triangle is Seagrace. So Seagrace apparently is not doing music over there in Raleigh. And I know that Cicely Mitchell, who's one of the founders of Art of Cool, and I was actually, along with Al Strong, was one of the early people that was doing consulting with them when they were creating that festival. But they had the 2000, and then that was in 2014. So I was just wondering, was that one of the early events that you did? Because that was around the time of your beginning. And she does have this new space that she just opened up that I understand is doing wonderful, even though I haven't had a chance to get there yet, called Missy's, I think it's got Missy Lane's Assembly Room. So that's in the downtown area as well. I think it's over there across from the Presbyterian Church, if I'm remembering correctly. And all
Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to get a hold of that. I was in Hayti. I was hitting Hayti pretty heavy, and you guys were doing, the Tom Browns and all those Roy Ayers and all those great musicians from the past. And I cut my teeth in Hayti with my concerts, I believe. Yeah, I started with Hayti, but I didn't get to do the Art of Cool till 2018.
Gotcha.
I did 2018 and 2019. And then, COVID came.
Yeah.
So that was another group that had it at that time. But because I was a musician, I loved doing concerts. Oh God, I love doing concerts. And that's why I love Hayti, because it's a challenge. But I'm gonna be honest with you. I learned how to shoot concerts by doing all those shows in Hayti.
Wow.
I've developed a system of coverage. I knew what lenses I could do, and then when I upgraded my cameras, I knew the limitations of the former camera. So when I got the new camera, I knew I could do a little bit more in the low light. Because I never use flash. Never use flash. Only time I might use flash is in the foyer out there. That's different. That's a different thing. But I'm tell some of the photographers, don't use flash. Learn how to shoot without it if you can get the right equipment. But when you use flash, the stuff doesn't look the same. Now, you're bringing back memories because I met Angela at a golf tournament with what year was that? So it had to be 2014 or 13, and that's with Sherrod Banks and the Carolina Classic, and I started shooting there probably 2012, I think. Yeah, I was right. And I went to photography school at Durham Tech, by the way. Want to get that in. I had one of the best instructors in 2012. That it was not a accredited course, but it was one of the best in North Carolina. One of the best in North Carolina. And I took every class you guys they had. I took sports photography. I took fine art. And then I did started with the beginning, 1 and 2, level 1 and level 2. And then I took intermediate. Then I took advanced and so on and so forth. Every class that they had, I took down there in Durham Tech. And I advise anybody to get into a good photography class and course so you can understand. Everybody's got talent. I can understand that. But you need to know how to use the equipment. You need to know about the batteries. You need to know where you can buy them. You need to know about the SD cards or whatever type of card that you need for your camera. And you need to know that you need to have 2 card slots for redundancy. When you do a paying job, you gotta, every time I shoot a paying gig, I got 2 cards in there and I got 2 cameras. And cameras will break down on you. They will.
Cameras definitely break down. You got to be protected against that and everything. One of the things I was curious about is that you just mentioned it earlier, and we've talked about it even on this network, this notion of because we actually talked about it on our news show earlier today, fiscal literacy and all along those lines. But I sometimes get, and you have this music background as well, frustrated by our folks in the artistic field that don't understand the business aspect of it, whether, and it's called show business, whether it's photography or even photography business, for a reason. So how much of that was a part of the journey that you had to get comfortable with the business aspect? Because no matter what the talent is, whether you're a visual artist or a photographer or a drummer or whatever, a lot of times we don't always know the business aspect. So at what point did you become comfortable with the business aspect of the business?
Well, my photography instructor, his name was Mike Dellerman. Dellerman. I don't know if he's still at Durham Tech. It's been a while. But Mike was a good resource to counsel you on how to. The first thing you got to know is what to charge and where to charge it.
Right.
Okay. What the market will bear.
Right.
Then you have to understand what you can deliver. Because one of the worst things, you guys, is that I see a lot of people go and learn on the job. That's terrible. Oh, that's terrible. You can't learn on somebody else's dime. It's not right. You know, you should hear all the horror stories. Some people just take a wedding without any training. You don't have no business shooting a wedding without being trained. You have to. There's a lot going on. You have to. Somebody has to show you and teach you how to shoot a wedding. You can't do that cold turkey. I don't care how big your ego is. But
that makes a lot of sense. And even along those lines, because you mentioned it earlier, this notion that you have to go, and I'm not knocking it. My dad actually was a professor at UNC, but you have some people that I guess feel that you have to go to a 4-year school in order to get a good degree and the skill set. But as you just said, whether it's photography or it's other fields, including like some of the plumbing and bricklaying fields, we have some very strong schools in the community college aspect that can also teach as well. And I'm not knocking the schools like UNC, and I think East Carolina and Duke might have some strong journalism programs that have some aspect of photography, but we also have some that are in the community college and the technical college field as well, because you just mentioned that you attended Durham Tech and didn't necessarily go to the UNC or the quote unquote elite schools.
Yeah, you know, a guy like me, I was already an adult. I was working a full-time job, so I went night school. So I was there at night, and it was very affordable. I mean, I can take a class $75 back then. I don't know what they are. Some of the bigger ones maybe cost $100, but it was worth it, because now when I came to shoot at Hayti, there were several other photographers shooting as well, and they were vying for the position too, because they wanted to be, you know, Angela told me, she said, you're going to be our primary photographer. And that was a great accomplishment. But my instructor, Mike Dellerman, said, you go through these courses. He said, there's no job you won't be able to get and hold down. He told me that.
Wow.
He told me that. He was right. He said, when I train you and send you out there, you're going to get hired and you're going to be able to do a job. And
Charles, before I bring up some of these other pictures of yours, I definitely want to show some people your work or some of the work that I found from your website and everything. But one of the other things we talk about on this network quite a bit is this notion of the imposter syndrome, or the belief of not feeling confident in of yourself and everything. And I know that there have been jobs, including some of the jobs that has existed at Hayti, and even you mentioned your divorce relationships that I had probably needed to pursue, that I talked myself out of. And by the time I talked myself into them, the individual that I was trying to pursue, the young lady, had already left the door, headed out the door, got married, got attached, got whatever they do and everything. So those opportunities were missed because I was too busy having that inner dialogue and that inner conversation. And sometimes you talk yourself out of things that might be worth going after. So I was just wondering, as I have seen you all these years, is very confident in what you do. How do you get out of that inner voice? Because we all have that inner voice and that inner critic that will tell us all the reasons that we shouldn't do the things that we probably should do. So how have you conquered that inner critic?
Man, I'm gonna tell you something. You're bringing it back home, because my buddy, and you know, I got a little ADD, so I'll be talking all over the place. But my friend Lorenzo Lewis was the guy that had the nonprofit. He prayed for me, actually. And he said, I'm gonna pray for you, Chuck, and you're gonna wake up in the morning and you're gonna know exactly what you're supposed to do. And I did. It's a fact. I'm telling you, I woke up and knew, for some strange reason, I was going to do photography, because I never touched it. After I gave my sister that camera, I started doing music. Right. I never, ever thought about photography again. Wow. No, I never. When I came back in 85, 86, I gave that camera to my sister. And I did not start photography till 2010.
Wow. So okay? That's a long time to go between the time that you gave.
I never thought about photography, Mark. I didn't. So I can't say this is something I kept up and kept going. But the way I got that, it was a gift. And so there's certain shots. And last night I was working on my Hayti shots from the jazz ensemble we did Sunday.
Right.
And some of those shots are what I call money shots. And it's just like everything comes in. I go, oh, that's it. Right. Now, my bass guitar didn't work like that. So this is an active gift. This is my personal. So it's not me. I don't feel like it's me. I feel like I'm that guy that's not a really good photographer. Sometimes I make crazy mistakes. I'm like, what happened here? How did I do that? How did I make that? But I did get instruction, because that was the first thing I did. I went and got instruction, but I still have gifting from God. That's just the fact. My gift comes from God. And one thing about photography, videography as well, you got to have a passion that drives you, because there's so much to know and do. Yeah, I believe that, because you have to want to do it, because there's a lot you're doing. You know how many pictures we take, and you gotta work through it. But your passion is what drives you through editing the photos from a vision inside, and you gotta work with it to develop. It's like now listen, I don't know what it is, but a lot of former musicians are videographers and photographers.
No,
Don't
I've
know
seen
why,
that.
but I see it. But I do know the mindset. You want to play your instrument that what comes up comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take these photographs, wherever you are, there's visions that come like, I want this to do this. I'm waiting on this to do that. There it is. Boom. Or you just know when it happens. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just took the picture. I don't know what. But
Do
some
you
of these
think?
photographs, I'm surprised. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
speaking of being surprised, do you think that sometimes photographers, because I mentioned earlier another photographer friend of mine, and he's definitely been interviewed here some time back. I think it was the beginning of the IBM Pod TV family and everything, that being Martin Fried, and he definitely did some sports photography. And like I said, we use him for the Road to the Apollo. But his wife is in real estate, so a lot of times I think that sometimes photographers don't pay enough attention to real estate and to commercial photography. And I've brought up this work of yours and everything. So I just wondered, do you think that sometimes photographers are so busy wanting the quote unquote glamour part of the job that they ignore this part, which can also make some good revenue, whether it's residential, like in the sense of what real estate people do, or this, which looks like more of a business shot, and all along those lines. So do you think that sometimes photographers are neglecting a market that they might want to consider?
woo, Mark, that's deep, man. Golly. Now this photograph was taken in Cary,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm going to tell you, I just retired from Cary, and guess what? Construction management, which is building inspections, and I was a plans examiner.
Yeah.
So what I did, you guys, and this is always keep your dreams alive. I started taking pictures like that for our directors
Mm-hmm.
when they did presentations of new commercial buildings.
Yes.
But because I went to photography school, I knew how to shoot architectural photography. That was the
Mm-hmm.
course I took. And so, let me tell you, I love architectural photography. One of the first gigs I did was on the rooftop of downtown Durham, um, where the Lucky Stripes water tower is and the
Yep.
Bull. When I got up there, it was about this time of year. It was cold and windy, and I was up there taking pictures on that rooftop. And it was a part of our assignment to do night photography. And uh, doing night photography there blew me up on the inside. It was so gratifying. It was a visceral feeling. I had learned how, like this shot that you have here, um, it's done during the golden hour and then the blue hour. You know,
Yeah.
you can see these things coming, and you wait for it. This is funny. I never smoked cigarettes in my life, but when I was waiting, I wanted to smoke a cigarette because it was like shooting fish in a barrel. I was like, "Oh, this is great. I wish I had a cigarette." I don't even know why that came up to me, but
Yeah.
it was just wild. I was just like, if I smoked, I would smoke a cigarette right now and watch it. And we were on vacation um, on my birthday. For my birthday, yeah, it was yeah, everything was closed down because my birthday's in March, and I just walked the beach. These landscape photos, landscape photography is a love of mine because I read something from Ansel Adams said that things that you're shooting, they were already there. You just discover it. You're not creating it. Now, this is downtown, going towards downtown Raleigh on 401.
Right.
This was a paying gig. This
Wow.
was a wonderful gig, you guys. These are, this is an engineering firm, and they do sprinkler design. I think it's called Crawford Sprinkler. But
Yes, it is. I see it
mhm,
on
mhm,
the
mhm.
sign.
Yep, I love vehicles. I saw the truck. They put the truck out there for me, and they hired me to do their marketing.
Mm.
And so this is one of the photos for their marketing.
Wow.
And as you can see, the sun's going down, and we waited for the sun to go horizontal, and they loved the way the sun set, kind of was on its way down and set there. And I just took photographs, and I did headshots. I do headshots.
Yeah,
So this
I
was
was
a
going to bring
very
up some of your other stuff too. This one I found very interesting because this looked like it was somebody that was doing technical work of some sort, like a welder
oh
or something like that.
no, guess what? That was a part of this job.
Okay.
This was they do sprinkler systems in commercial buildings.
Okay.
So if there's ever a fire somewhere, you've seen those little sprinkler heads. They design the piping. So you got to do the piping side. So he's welding.
Right.
So he's putting it together. It's a custom system. But he said, I need something that's going to give him a little spark and pizzazz. And I said, man, that guy right there. And that's where the gift came in, because this was not planned. And we did that on site. I said, oh, let me get that guy. And so he was over there doing that. And we talked about it. And we set it up, and I got a safe distance because those hot sparks were flying.
That looked like that would be hot and everything. Just out of curiosity, Chuck, and everything, they say that one of the hardest things to shoot, and I don't have any in the moment. Well, don't have any, and probably will never have one group that I'm going to mention, which is kids. But I do have my two nephews that are now about to be. Well, they are 14, 15 because they turned that in August and everything. But at a time in my life, I had pets. Definitely have had cats, and then in past have had dogs and even some geckos. But they have said that the hardest thing to shoot for any photographer is pets and kids. So how true is that, and how much? What advice do you give to folks that want to shoot these particular individuals, be it their own kids or other people's kids or pets? Because I've heard to many folks that is the hardest thing to shoot is pets and kids.
Yes. I did a family shoot, and they had a kid, a 4-year-old child, that really put me through the ringers. This kid, every time I think I got something, this kid would just go whoop and just fidget and move. It was tough. Pets are tough. It just depends. I always think the kids are tougher than the pets, because a lot of times you can calm the animal down. We use treats and different things. You get their attention, and they look really good with flash on them and stuff. It looks really good. I've had some good pet shoots. I don't do a lot of young kids. I haven't had those, but they're good around Christmas. But you gotta be ready to start out, because they don't last. They get burnt out real quick. It is challenging, but if you do a Christmas shot and you got them in a sleigh or something like that, you just want, the kid's not going to be perfectly posed, but you just want them smiling and being happy, laughing or whatever. And that's what I go for. And action shots with them running looks great.
Yeah.
Looks great. That's just a little quick something, but yeah, this is another shot at.
Yeah, this was in an ocean environment. I don't know
down in Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife surprised me on my 50th birthday. We went down there, and I just got up early and walked the beach, and because I wanted to go there before all the footprints were there. Mm-hmm. But this is an early shoot, and I just took my camera and took a walk, wow. and I just loved it. Yeah,
it looks like a great shot and everything. I remember years ago, I think it was 2020, going on with a friend on a cruise. It was the one and only cruise I've ever been on, and I remember seeing some great pictures. I think that particular individual had their camera with them. I might have only had the phone, and I don't remember a lot of those pictures, but we definitely saw some great pictures on the cruise, and definitely it's on my bucket list to go on another one. It's actually with mama, we're thinking about doing a family one at some point or another.
Oh yeah.
This is a great shot. This was like one of our cities. It looks like that might
be Raleigh.
Yeah, Raleigh Skyline.
Yeah, Raleigh Skyline. So like I said, I was in construction management, and one of the groups, Winstead and Wilkinson, or was it Wilkinson and Winstead? But down there off Old Wake Forest Road. They designed quite a few of these buildings down here. Mm. And they told me to go get a Raleigh Skyline shoot. Now, let me tell you about that gig. That gig, we were talking, and he said, well, we got a photographer, but he's out of town. I said, where's he from? And he says, he's from Cleveland. I said, what? I said, you flying from Cleveland here? And he goes, yeah. I said, look, I'm from Cleveland, and I'm at your backyard. You ain't got to fly me nowhere. And so he said he gave me a list of shots that the previous photographers took, and they just said, "Have at it. Just do what you do. I need a downtown shot for Boylan Avenue on the bridge." And then they just told me and gave me a description of the shots and said, "You just do your version." And so,
Wow, well, this is a beautiful shot. What would be your dream picture and everything? This is another shot. I can tell that this looks like this is still raw and everything. But what would be your dream picture that you haven't taken that you wish that you could get? That's still the one that's that shot. You know, everybody's got their shot of their ambition of something that they wish that they could take. You've traveled the world, like you mentioned earlier, having done the military and getting into photography from the military. But what's a dream shot that you have on your bucket list?
the Eiffel Tower in France, Paris, France. And I mean, just Europe itself. But my bucket list, I would go to Europe because when I was in Germany, I did travel around Europe, and I would go back to London and get Big Ben. Here, I really want to go out to LA. I want to go out west.
Right.
You know, but I can't get off of the New York skyline. I have fellow photographers in New York that I would set something up and go with them and do some New York landscape shooting. I would love to do that. And I probably will soon. But I want to go out west. My brother was living, he just came back. He just moved back from LA. He was in, I can't think of that, it begins with an M. He was in, I can't think of it right now.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, now this is another paying gig. The other ones I just did different variations, daytime and nighttime shoots of downtown Raleigh skyline. But this is a builder friend of mine, and he hires me to do shots on some of his buildings so he can put on his website.
Right.
So he's a builder, and this is one of his creations. Interesting guy, very so. So this is what he does, Mark. He takes his company is Zenith.
Zenith, you said?
Yeah. Zenith is the name of this company, Zenith Builders. But what he does is he takes a set of plans that you purchase, and once you purchase those plans, they're yours. And he lets you get an idea, and then he builds from that inspiration.
Is that a small fireplace? Because I'm looking at this second picture,
it's
and it looks like
elongated.
Small fireplace as opposed to the bigger fireplace I'm used to.
It's elongated, and I think it's a pass through. So on the other side, the little den or whatever, you see the windows there on the right side. There's a little. Not a sunroof, but a screen porch or something. Like a screen porch, I think. And it's another one, but it's sealed. It's a fireplace that's sealed, so it's gas.
Right.
And it's sealed. And so you can't touch the flames or anything. You can cut it on and you can see it on both sides.
Gotcha.
And so because I went to photography school, they taught me about what type of lens to use. And this lens is called rectilinear. Make sure all your lines are straight.
And I'm liking even the lines of this steps and everything because it's a unique step design that he's got going up to the second floor.
And he creates a lot, but it gets the people, they're interested. They bought the plans, and he'll just take those plans and he says, "This is what you like," and then he builds off of that inspiration, and he comes up with some incredible stuff. Incredible.
It sounds like he comes up with some very amazing stuff.
You can see it, right? Yeah. And he just gets better. Look at the size of the wood planks in the floor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're about 6 inches wide. I think there was 6-inch planks. Wow. He just does it different. Look at the railing. He used metal, and that was his idea. He used metal. He didn't
Totally
go
using
religious.
metal and everything. But yeah, that was just fascinating. I wanted to bring up some of the photography from other things, and we got about another 10, 15 minutes to go and everything. And there's a question I ask everybody, but this has been a fun conversation like I expected it would be and everything. And I have to get you to come back on when we do other shows with multiple guests. But yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying learning about the different things that you do. And all along those lines, I'm going to bring up some of the music photography as well. But definitely, like I said, some things I didn't even know, including your being related to the famous Ruffins of
Yeah,
the Temptations and all along those lines, if I'm remembering
yeah,
correctly.
yeah. Every once in a while, I'll sing. Ain't too proud to beg, and it's fun. I just love that song as I was a kid, and so I can kind of hold it a little bit. That if I practice enough, I can do David Ruffin a bit. But I used to love that song, just the way he did it. And sometimes at parties, you catch me right, I'll try to sing it before.
You'll breast into some songs. Well, this is some of the photography from some of the concerts. I'm going to bring some of those up really quickly, and maybe some from the
Okay.
wedding, since we know that people get
Hey,
involved.
that's the Art of Cool. Yeah, yeah, that's the Art of Cool in 2019. I think I think it was my second one. That was
Okay.
fun. They had this was good. They had a great step and repeat when the artist came off stage.
Mm-hmm.
And because I went to photography school, I knew about lighting. These are my lights I had set up
Oh, wow.
for them. And I call them clean lights. They got a CR value of like 97 or 98. So it's really clean lights. And they look like flash, but you just put two big lights up there and let them flash. Yep. And so these are some of the artists there. And it was fun.
Yeah, that sounds like that would be
Article was
fun.
amazing.
Yeah. You got
It
the
was amazing.
you got the people sitting there with the performer and everything. So some of the audience was there with the performer. So
Yep,
definitely.
yep. Their husband and wife, and that was their daughter before. And this is before it got started. And you might recognize my boy Rashid.
Yeah, Rashid
Yeah,
and
DMX.
yeah.
Huh. Yep, David DMX. And they just came and hung out. It was great. We were just back there, waiting to go on, and they just came and told he played bass, and we talked about playing bass too. Yeah,
There's
and so
DMX right there. And this
yeah,
is a great shot. I saw this one earlier with somebody doing a performance. It might have been an ad article, but this is a great show of the singer really getting involved in the song. And you can see the emotion coming out of the singer and also out of the rhythm section as well.
this was fabulous. Guess what? We had to back up because the artist said, "Hey, I don't want you too close." So I had a long lens. I was glad I had a 200 millimeter lens and shooting that. Yeah, that's Jill Scott.
Jill Scott. Yeah, Jill Scott
That's Jill
doing her.
Scott. Yeah,
Jill
beautiful
Scott.
girl. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's DMX folks
Yeah.
doing their things. There's Jill Scott
Jill
again.
Scott again with that. Look at that face. She's just full of fire. Excellent performer. Oh, so much passion in what she does. Yeah, I enjoyed her.
Is there a performer that you haven't shot? I mentioned locations. Is there a performer you haven't shot that you either wish you had shot because they have passed on and maybe you missed a chance to get them? I don't know if you ever shot Prince or Michael Jackson,
Man, let me
some
tell
of
you
the other
something.
ones that have passed on, or is there a performer now that you are hoping to shoot? Maybe you were hoping to get Taylor
Before
Swift.
we say performer, I gotta say this. I had a dream when Barack Obama was president. I had a dream that I was his private photographer.
Oh,
That
wow.
didn't happen, or maybe it'll happen later. I don't know. But I dreamed that I was his photographer, man, and the whole dream was a shoot. I had a dream and that was a shoot with Barack Obama. I know it's not a musical artist, but I'm telling you that happened.
Wow.
That happened. And I woke up and I could feel it. I said, man, I dreamed I was Barack Obama's President Obama's personal photographer. And we were in DC. We shot up in the White House. We went out and we were in some kind of tent place and I shot out there and blah blah blah. I had that dream. Musically, oh wow.
Is this the Black Violins or is this somebody else? Because I
That's
see
exactly
the.
who that is. Yep,
Okay.
yep, they were at the article. Um, if I had to say an artist that I wanted to shoot, I did. I regret. Let me tell you something, you guys. When I went to elementary school, I went to elementary school with Gerald Levert.
Okay.
The OJs lived in my neighborhood. They had a club in Cleveland, right outside a little place called Garfield. When I was in third grade, Gerald Levert was in second grade, and he had two other guys singing with him. And this was his first song. They said, this is one of the sons of the OJs, blah, blah, blah. His name is Gerald, and he's going to sing. And they took him from class to class. And the name of the song was When Your Heart Was Beating Fast.
Oh, wow.
And he was just up there, when your heart was beating fast, beating fast. And y'all can still remember the song and the melody. And he had two other guys, they was doing the OJ thing. They were doing spins and coming around, and Levert was singing that song. And that was his little song. He was in second grade.
No, we actually have a show on the network. I know that you're familiar because you're there in Cary, but Coco McMillan does her show every Thursday. And of course, she sang background with Gerald Levert and the other members of In Front. So she's actually had some of those folks. She actually just did an interview.
Love it.
Yeah, you definitely have to talk to her because she does a show every Thursday, and she was literally the background vocalist along with some others, and she's still active in the music scene. As a matter of fact, she has a tea shop there in the Cary train station. Well, tea and coffee, I think it is. But
I used to work right across the street. I've never been there.
Yeah, but that's her company, and I think she's co-owners with of another venue that's in Morocco, because that's one of her dreams, is to go back to Morocco and all along those lines. So definitely some amazing concert shots that I want to show as well. Just really quickly before I ask you the question I asked everybody, there's two questions, and then we'll get ready to wrap up very shortly. But I'm getting ready to bring up just a couple of the wedding shots as well, because I know a lot of people are into weddings and all along those lines, and sometimes people are still trying to figure out if they're going to find their other half and all along those lines. So I was going to just bring up some of the wedding shots, because I know on your website you've got concerts, graduations, real estate and landscape, which I showed portraits and weddings, so you do a variety of styles and everything. But I was just going to bring up so the folks to see some of these very great romantic shots from the wedding standpoint and all along those lines before we get ready to get on out of here and everything. So let me get ready to bring those up, and we'll see some of these beautiful. There's one of a beautiful couple and everything that folks might be interested in as well. So let me see if I can't get to that and bring that up as well. There we go. So that's the beautiful couple that is ready to exchange their wedding bliss and all along those lines. But that is a great shot, and definitely you see that.
It's funny you pulled that one up. I was getting ready to pull him up. That's Jordan Tazwell.
Okay.
He designed my website.
Okay.
And let me tell you, he used to go to my church. He got married, and they moved out to California. They're no longer in North Carolina. We're still in connection because he used to work at Lenovo. And somebody hijacked my website. This girl took my website with all the pictures and put her name on it, and she owned it, and I couldn't take it back. And I went and got Jordan Tazwell, and he came and took it back and fixed it where nobody else could hijack it anymore. I didn't know how to do that stuff. Right. But we got real tight because, man, that meant a lot to me. And so he's like a godson to me.
Wow.
And so I got to know his family, and then I got to know his wife's family. Her father and I just sat down before the wedding, and we just connected. We talked for hours.
Wow. This looks like a great shot. This looks like a great shot of a bride that you took as well.
Yeah. And then get the whole thing. It's a funny website. You might have to click on it or whatever. But that was another shot thanks to my lighting instructor. Yeah. This is another group. They love black and whites. He told me. This is Richard, and Crystal is his wife. And this is actually my niece and nephew.
Oh, wow.
And that's in Cleveland, right off Lake Erie.
Right off of Lake Erie. Wow.
Yeah, right off, like I
don't know if you saw this, but I just saw that one of our North Carolina counties, and speaking of small counties, got named as one of the best in the world, which actually might surprise folks. I know that there have been a number of things where Durham and Raleigh and Charlotte have been listed as great places, but I was looking at an article yesterday, and of all places, Hickory, North Carolina was named as a great location, and that more people should be coming to Hickory. And I've not even gone to Hickory myself, but Hickory was listed as a world top location. I saw this in an article yesterday. It was listed as Hickory down there in the, I guess that's the mountain area, if I'm remembering correctly.
There it is. Yeah, that's some friends of mine. They actually are members of my church as well, and that's Crystal. Crystal's Richard's wife, and that was a fun wedding. They were fun people, and the one you just shot was a very uh, romantic. Not that the others weren't, but it was very romantic. It was, the girl that got married, she had a twin brother.
Oh, well.
And when she got married, he just came down and hugged her, and he just cried. Oh my God!
This
He
sounds
just
like
woo-hooed and cried. It was something to see.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you can just let folks know, and I'm going to actually get off camera for a minute so I can throw on these shoes and get ready to get to the hate time, speaking of hate time, and all along those lines. But that being said, if you can tell folks how you can be reached, and the question I ask everybody on these shows and everything is their message of positivity and hope, because that is something that I believe in wholeheartedly. So I try to get all my guests with all these hard times that we're going through to give a message of positivity and hope for the global community, because this show is seen in a variety of countries around the world, because Pod TV is a global network, and I'm glad to be part of that. Kim and Nick have helped me become part of the leadership team, so glad to be part of that. So if you want to tell folks how you can be reached and any message of positivity and hope that you've got, and by the time you're done with that, I should have the shoes on, be ready to skedaddle on over.
Got your shoes on. All right. Well, look, I just want to say this. As far as being positive, I am a Christian, and I believe strongly in giving praises to our Creator. Um, he's responsible for who I am. He gave me a makeover, and that's the energy that brings out my positivity. Um, Everything flows through that. That power of the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, is in me, and He leads me. He's the light of my salvation. God is the light of my salvation. I can honestly say that. I love people, and that's important. Nobody's perfect, including ourselves, but it's different when you are in this particular field and you love people, because you can keep it moving when you come upon, with hurt people or whatever. You can keep it moving, but uh, I have a servant's mentality, and I think that is also helpful. I think that's something we all need to think about. I'm here to service this. I'm trying to help you. I want everybody looking good, and so on and so forth. And so I think those are my building blocks and my cornerstone of positivity.
No, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Along those same lines, before you tell folks how you can be reached and everything, how important do you think it is to maintain connection to your past as well? Because I know that I personally use some of the things that I learned from my grandmother, who was a famous librarian here in this area before she passed away in, I believe that was the 80s, if I'm remembering correctly, and all along those lines. But definitely her memory still guides my footsteps these days. And of course, as you know, some of our great leaders, even with the Hayti family, have passed on, like Phil Freelon and Papa Chuck Davis and a number of others as well. So how important do you feel it is to have that connection to the and even Skippy Scarborough, who used to talk a lot about the history of Hayti, and who I use even some of his education that he gave me in the presentations that I give now about Hayti as well. So how important do you think it is to have that connection to the past, even in your own life?
I'm going to keep it real. If you have, some people don't have a good past.
Right.
And so let's talk about that. But if you have a good past, draw from it. Because I guess I'm just a firm believer that I know everything is not the same and everything is not universal. Some people have not had good past, but you can create your good past. You can make it. You can create it. You know what's good. You know what's right. Sometimes I work with people who didn't have a good past or a good upbringing. And so what they did was they turned around and said, well, I'm not going to do anything to duplicate that. Right. I'm going to make sure I change everything around. I'm going to be the one that brings change. That is a very positive and motivating thing. My past wasn't perfect. It was not perfect. I had good parents. They meant well. And one good thing about them, they connected on raising us. Now, they weren't connected too much together, and I'm not dogging them or anything like that. It's just what it was. But they came together to make sure that we came out as best as we could. And one of the things that we got from our parents, working. That was it. A great work ethic. Mm-hmm. That was something that I got from my parents. And so I think you can focus on what was good and what was great and magnify it. Because of my work ethic, any job I get, I'm going to be there early. I'm going to be there on time. I'm going to produce. I'm going to overproduce. I'm going to give you the best that I got. I'm going to give you everything I got, not leave anything on the table. Take a lot of pride in my work and what I do. And it always comes back. It always comes back well. You'll get a job. You'll get a call back. That's what you want. Yeah. You want people to love to see you coming. So these are the work ethics that I draw from. They say, oh, here come Chuck. We're good. We're covered. Mm-hmm. That's what I want them to say. Mm-hmm. So you can reach me at real easy Chuck Ruffin Photography at Gmail. Chuck Ruffin Photography. That's Chuck, and Ruffin is Ruffin. Chuck, and then on Twitter at CR_photos. And my Instagram is money_shots. And his shots are CHOTS. Money_shots. There's a little CH in there. But that's how you can reach me. And I'm glad to talk with you, work with you. If you got a project, or if you're another photographer, hit me up and we can chop it up and figure out what we can do if I can help you. I'll be glad to help you be successful. That's another one of my motivating things as I think about it. I help a lot of people. Everything's not paid. I do a lot of pro bono work as well. Because my thing is, if I can help you, Mark, if you can help me, and you just say, hey, Chuck, I just need you to do this, I'll help you.
Well, I definitely appreciate that, and that's some great advice, and you always do great in that environment and everything. So I've, like I said, thoroughly enjoyed this. Get ready to skedaddle on over to HI, but we're going to have a message about the positivity of folks that are involved in a number of fields, and actually a gentleman that was on Barbara Smith's show does an award ceremony out of Oklahoma that honors not just the teachers, but the people behind the scenes, such as the janitors and other folks that work in the school system. And I think he's been doing this now for about 5 or 6 years. So this is actually from one of the past ones, and that'll be our closing out PSA and all along those lines. But Chuck, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We'll have to get back on another show and chop it up again, but this might be one of several, and I hope that folks have learned a lot about you, and hopefully I can get you back maybe even next Wednesday when I know I've got a multitude of guests, but we can have these chop it up sessions where I do them for about an hour and a half. Sometimes they go for 2 hours if I'm at the Hayti already, but they're at least an hour and a half and all along those lines, but get ready to head out the door. But I've thoroughly enjoyed us chopping it up.
Mark, you're doing a great work, buddy. I want you to know that this is good. It's rich. It's good for the community. It's good for me. And it's good to get us together and bridge the gap, you know. So I'm looking forward to meeting Coco. That'd be great. If I get a chance to, I want to talk with her and meet her. That'd be great. And so go ahead, do your thing, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
No problem. I definitely appreciated having you on and learned a lot of things that I didn't even know that we're going to get on out of here. But this has been a great conversation, and I'll send you an invitation for the show on Monday and Wednesday, and I'll also be producing Coco's show tomorrow. So I'll definitely tell her about your Carry Ties, and maybe we can make that introduction sooner versus later. But we'll see.
Okay, Carry Ties and Gerald. All right. See you, buddy.
See you.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you. I thank you for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
It's time for Bible or Babble. Gather round for your new favorite show. If you little